Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
5:07 on a Friday in your nation's capital as we continue to unpack this story about a suspected school shooter, at least a student who planned a school shooting in Montgomery County. CNN, by the way, Julie, completely omitted the fact that this person is a transgender student who probably is dealing with a lot of mental issues. Although, are we allowed to say that thinking that you're born in the wrong body is a mental issue? Because I know that there are rules here. I don't want to trigger anybody, okay, but I just want to let everybody know and warn them that we're not going to be adopting this person's preferred pronouns as we talk about her attempt to murder her fellow classmates as the morning goes on. We'll get to the details of that story.
Because we deal in reality.
Yes. It's a fact-based program here.
That's right.
On O'Connor and Company. At 7:05, Hung Cao running for Senate in Virginia. 7:15, Brad Bell, Maryland Bureau Chief for Channel 7, covering this story in Montgomery County. 7:35, Alyssa D'Souza, Washington, D.C. resident, talking about the latest crime wave at Naval Yard. 8:05, Pat Harity, Fairfax County Supervisor. 8:15, Nick Minnock, who was just out in Loudoun County and got his cameras, tried to kick him out of the school board meeting. And then at 8:35, Congressman Chip Roy. Wow, I'm looking at the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock hour, every single slot filled with it. But we better be really on our game here, otherwise it's gonna get ugly in the latter part of the show here as we.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you're talking to me, Larry.
I know. I'm taking
Gunlock.
I'm taking a deep breath and just trying to relax because with 6 guests in 2 hours, it's going to be.
Yeah, I get it, Larry. You're telling me to stay on the clock. I got it.
Not at all. No, I'm telling myself. That we just got to be disciplined. This is going to be a very busy morning, but not as busy as Karine Jean-Pierre's day yesterday. Trying her best to do. By the way, Julie Gunlock is here on a Friday.
Oh, well, thank you. Hello.
I think it's important to notice that this is a special weekend appearance by the effervescent Julie Gunlock.
You're missing your Patrice. It is not it's not quite a Friday.
You haven't said Frags. There it is. We got it. All right. So let's get to President Biden and his tall tales. Go. That's correct. We cannot talk about Joe Biden now without talking about the fact that his uncle allegedly got eaten by cannibals in the island of New Guinea. Imagine what a challenging day it was for the U.S. ambassador to New Guinea yesterday.
Oh, my God.
Having to diplomatically clean this up. No, Mr. Prime Minister, I promise you the president doesn't think of your country as the place where his uncle got eaten.
But he does.
He misspoke, you see.
I see.
Karine Jean-Pierre had to clean it all up yesterday. All right, so let's start. Just to remind you, if you missed it, this was Joe Biden. And by the way, let me set this up properly, because this actually pisses me off, if I may say.
You may.
He makes up a story, an outlandish, outrageous, ridiculous story about his uncle getting downed in a plane in World War II in New Guinea, and they never recovered his body, and there were cannibals there. And now they're going to say, well, he never said his uncle got eaten by cannibals. The obvious implication.
Of course.
His plane went down, they never found his body, and the country was covered with cannibals. I mean, connect the dots, guys. So he makes up this story about his uncle getting eaten by cannibals in World War II. But people are losing this part of the story. You know why he did this? Do you know why he set this story up?
I actually don't.
At the campaign event, he tells this story about his uncle being eaten by cannibals and then pivots. And he said, I think about that. And then I think about Trump, when he was president, deciding not to visit a military cemetery.
Oh, right.
Because he said that all those people were chumps for fighting for their country. And it just drives me crazy because look at what my uncle had to go through. And I'm sure you all have family members who also had to go through something in the military. And he's not fit to be commander-in-chief because of the way he believed. That was the setup. So he told this ridiculous lie so he could then pivot and tell another lie about Donald Trump, a story that's been thoroughly debunked.
Right.
So it's stupid and it's funny and we make fun of him, but it's typically absolutely infuriating that this man is such a divisive, hateful person that he has to make up this lie to then slime other people. All right, so here he is telling the story about the cannibal.
Back when D-Day occurred, and on Sunday, the next day, my mother's 4 brothers all went down to the recruiting station and joined the military. Every one of them volunteered. And my uncle, they called him Ambrose Brosey, they called him Bosey. My Uncle Bosey was a hell of an athlete, they tell me, when he was a kid. And he became an Army Air Corps before the Air Force came along. He flew those single-engine planes as reconnaissance over war zones. He got shot down in New Guinea, and they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
There you go. They never found the body because there used to be cannibals there for real in New Guinea.
Did he, let me get this straight. Did I hear correctly that he said his mother's brothers joined up after D-Day?
I know. I thought that was funny too. It's like most of the time the story is right after Pearl Harbor, everybody joined up.
Right,
but they waited until the final push to go into Europe, and then suddenly they said, "Okay, we might as well join."
Yeah, I mean that D-Day, June 6, 1944, sort of the waning days of the war.
Yeah, I know. I found that to be interesting too. But who knows? Maybe they weren't old enough. Although it is weird that all 4 of them were old enough all at the same time. Yeah, they waited it out until the very end. Now that D-Day's over, let's join up, I guess, is what I mean. I think he meant Pearl Harbor. But again, who the hell knows?
Who knows?
Because he's just lying so that he can say. But and then obviously, let me just, in case anyone is curious, his uncle was not eaten by cannibals. Okay, everybody knows this. Here's NBC News yesterday. This is before Karine Jean-Pierre had to do her damage control. NBC News. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
President Biden mischaracterizes the circumstances of his uncle's death. He's not lying, Julie. He's just mischaracterizing.
Right.
Associated Press. Associated Press. Are you ready? Biden is off on the details of his uncle's World War II death.
Off.
Not a lie. He was just off on the details.
Yeah.
So then the report. Oh, and by the way, yesterday was one of those press conferences at the White House where they didn't allow cameras. You know, once in a while it's audio only. Shockingly, surprisingly, they didn't want this one to be on camera.
Interesting.
But we don't care here on radio because it's all the same to us.
Right.
So one of the reporters asked Karine, actually, this is on Air Force One, so maybe that's why they didn't have cameras too. One of the reporters asked Karine Jean-Pierre, can we just see the cannibal tab on your prep book, which I think was kind of good. And then she confirms that the president was lying, but then, of course, did exactly what was intended, which was pivot and try to slime Donald Trump.
That's right.
And slander Donald Trump by repeating another lie about Trump apparently saying that military veterans are suckers and losers. All right, we're going to let you hear what Karine Jean-Pierre had to say about Cannibal Gate in just a moment. First, though, it's 5:50.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, if you like a good circus, you're going to love the jury selection process at President Trump's bogus trial in New York, 9 a.m. on WMAL.
And they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
For real. I like the for real part.
Yeah.
That was Joe Biden, according to NBC News, mischaracterizing the circumstances of his uncle's death. Or as Associated Press put it, was being off on the details of his uncle's death.
You mentioned that one of the reporters said, can we see the cannibal tab in his biography? Yeah. And they calling her out, obviously, on this, but still, in good fun.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. In fact, I want you to listen. Listen to all of the laughter. Listen.
Can we just see the cannibal tab in your book?
There's no cannibal tab. What are you talking about?
Oh, see, they're all in the scene. They're having a party. They're having a party about this.
It's just one of Joe's little, little stories.
Oh, Joe. Exactly. That something tells me.
My question, Larry, is did he bring up Bo dying in New Guinea?
Actually, he
after
did.
being eaten.
Actually, he did. Actually, he did. Again, we only have the audio. I'll try to drag it out here before the morning is out, because we do have an extended cut. He talks about his uncle being eaten by cannibals. Then he flips and starts to talk about Bo serving in Iraq, and then he came home and had cancer. He actually got the story right this time, although he suggested by the telling of it, excuse me, he was suggesting that his son Bo died of cancer because he served in Iraq.
Yeah.
And then he pivots and talks about about Trump. But here's Karine Jean-Pierre. So first they have a good laugh about the Cannibals tab, and then she goes right after Trump. This is all about Trump. It's Trump's fault that Biden lied about his uncle being eaten by cannibals.
Is that what you're asking me about?
Can you fit us in?
Yeah.
Okay, look, I'll just, and I think we shared this with some of you, so I'm just going to kind of repeat. Look, you saw the president. He was incredibly proud of his uncle's service in uniform. You saw him at the War Memorial. It was incredibly emotional and important to him. You saw him respond to all of you when asked about the moment yesterday. And his uncle, who lost his life when the military aircraft he was on crashed in the Pacific after taking off near New Guinea. The president highlighted his uncle's story as he made the case for honoring our sacred commitment to equip those we send to war and to take care of them and their families when they come home. And as he reiterated that the last thing American veterans are suckers or losers, and he wanted to make that clear. He wanted to make the story. I mean, look, I don't have anything beyond about what I just laid out, but it was a really proud moment for him. It was incredibly emotional.
I don't have anything beyond what I just laid out, which is a pre-scripted further attack on Donald Trump based on a lie.
Yep.
They're not suckers or losers because that's what Trump thinks they are.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait, but that's not the question, Karine Jean-Pierre. The question is, why does your boss continue to make up stories and lie? If Trump is so bad and he's so awful, why do they have to try to put him in jail? Why do they have to take him off the ticket, state after state after state? And why do they have to continue to make up stories about how bad he is? That's right. You would think if he was so awful and so bad and so terrible, they could just, here's Trump. Here he is. This is what he says. This is what he does. But no, they have to constantly lie and lie and lie. And it makes you wonder, gee, maybe they're also lying about Trump.
It is just absolutely shocking how the press allows this to happen, allows this to go on, and then they chuckle about it.
I mean,
I know.
Are we allowed to call it Cannibal Gate?
We are.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
I only half jokingly mentioned the country of New Guinea, but they are an ally of ours. I mean, has there been an apology issue?
I doubt it.
The idea that the president of the United States is floating the idea out here that New Guinea is swarming with cannibals that will eat you if you go back. What's the tourism going to be like in New Guinea?
It's just such a shocking thing to say, and then. This is going to be memory hold. Like, no one will talk about this, but the media will just move on and allow the lies about Trump, the lies about this guy's uncle, just to sit there. It's just disgusting.
USA Today fact checker. Was Biden's uncle eaten by cannibals near New Guinea in World War II? Here's what the president said. That's the headline. You got to read way down deep. And then here it is. A politician's history of embellishment. Biden has a long history of embellishing stories on a number of subjects. He's just embellishing, Julie. He's not lying. It's 5:21. Well, I promised you the extended cut of Joe Biden. Here he is. Because I want to make sure you know that, unlike Joe Biden, I'm not telling you a tall tale. He took this cannibal story, pivoted to Bo, and then slimed Donald Trump with another lie.
And they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
For real.
And then my son volunteered to go to Iraq for a year, and he came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. And they gave, like many of you, risked your lives, and people who gave their lives to the country. They're heroes. But one of the things that as I was doing that today, I was reminded of what my opponent said in Paris not too long ago. They asked him to go visit American grave sites. He said no, he wouldn't do it because they were all suckers and losers. I'm not making that up.
Yeah, actually, he is making that up.
Yeah, he is.
Everything you just heard he made up except that his son died of cancer. Finnegan Ambrose, died on May 14th, 1944, which, by the way, is before D-Day. So he was wrong about that, too. Ambrose was not a pilot, and he was not shot down. He was a courier. He was a passenger on an A-20 bomber, and it needed to ditch at sea with engine troubles. At sea, not on the island of New Guinea. It was never even on the land. It ditched at sea. It's 5:29.
WMAL FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:37 now on this Friday morning. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in. Very busy show coming up once we hit the 7 o'clock hour at 7:05. Hung Cow running for Senate in Virginia. 7:15, Brad Bell, Maryland Bureau Chief for Channel 7 on that attempted school shooting or suspected school shooting in Maryland. 7:35, Alyssa D'Souza, concerned citizen in Washington on the crime wave at Navy Yard. 8:05, Pat Harity, Fairfax County Supervisor. 8:15, Nick Minnock of Channel 7 on Loudoun County School Board shutting off cameras. And at 8:35, Congressman Chip Roy. I am Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock here on a Friday morning. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Adam Carolla, I make fun of everybody having a podcast because everybody has a podcast.
Right.
Like literally everybody. There are 435 members of Congress, and there are also 435 new podcasts that have started. Adam Carolla, though, was one of the OGs. He started his podcast back in, I want to say 2010 or 11. Used to be a morning radio host. He sort of replaced Howard Stern when Howard Stern went to satellite radio. The network who had put Howard Stern on classic rock stations across the country hired Adam Carolla for most of his stations, at least. And of course, Adam Carolla used to do the match. Everyone knows who Adam Carolla is. Yeah. He now on his podcast yesterday, he had a pretty important, quick little monologue here about COVID and about something that we've talked about quite a bit, Julie, you and I, that there has never actually been any kind of reckoning over the horrible loss of freedom and liberty that we all had to endure. Quite possibly one of the greatest governmental oppressions, at least in the United States of America's history. I can't imagine a time in American history where every single citizen was forced to endure this kind of loss of freedom. Right. I understand we had the Japanese internment, we had slavery, but this was for every single citizen in the country that had to endure and live under this, except, of course, for the elected officials who imposed this on us. They all gave themselves waivers.
Yeah, remember the video of Gavin Newsom sitting in...
Oh, of course.
French Laundry.
And Nancy Pelosi at a hair salon, and the governor of Michigan and her husband with his boat on Lake Superior. Yeah. And the governor of Illinois going down to get play in Florida, and it just on and on and on.
On and on, yep.
Here's Adam Carolla yesterday.
A large group of people voted for Biden and don't want to hear it when you go, but you did know. No, not interested in that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because what it is, they do the same thing they did with COVID, which is, I'm now here to point out to you all you got wrong about COVID, and the number one answer I get is, oh, drop it already. And I'm like, oh, drop it already. Well, that's interesting. So it's 3 years of you trying to get me fired and yelling at me, and now we're just going to turn the page because you're wrong. I don't think people want to go back and revisit their batting average. Yeah. And it calls into question their future. Right? Like, what else are you wrong about now? Yes. Like, I want to sit down and tell you everything you're wrong about with COVID, which was everything. And when we move forward and another issue comes up, perhaps you can shut up. Batting average. They do not want to sit down and look at the scorecard.
That's right. Of course, because he has a podcast, he can say naughty words.
Right. But, we see this with education as well. We are dealing with learning loss, mental problem, mental health crisis, really, among young people today. and no one wants to talk about it.
No, move on.
No one. In fact, and the audacity of these teachers saying, we need pay raises, right? When, they stayed silent when the school officials and the teachers unions were trying to keep schools closed for as long as possible and masking kids for as long as possible. I mean, they were forced to open those schools and unmask those kids. In fact, 7 school districts in Northern Virginia tried to sue the governor for trying to unmask kids. I mean, that's how
right.
relentless it was, and we never talk about it. There's been no apologies. There's been no sort of it's introspection on why in the world people did this to our kids. There was even that in the Atlantic, that call for amnesty. Let's just move on.
Right.
It's enraging, as you can tell from my voice.
Listen, you started by saying they stayed silent during all of that. I would have preferred they stay silent. They did worse than that. They accused us of putting their lives in danger. They accused us of putting our children's lives in danger when it was actually quite the opposite. We know that the Senate is not going to take up the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas, but he did have to face off against senators in a Homeland Security committee meeting yesterday. Great stuff from both Senator Josh Hawley and from Senator Rand Paul. Lengthy dissertations from those two senators and lengthy attacks on Alejandro Mayorkas, asking him to answer for his policies specifically that led to the death and murder of Laken Riley. And then there was this moment from Senator Roger Marshall asking about technologies trying to track people who got away at the border. Listen to this. This is, again, as you listen to this, Virginia, I need you to understand. Tim Kaine, who wants 6 more years, he wants your vote this November. He voted to not address the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. As you listen to Mayorkas in this 2-minute questioning with Senator Marshall, understand that Tim Kaine not only is just fine with this, he thinks this is great. He thinks Mayorkas is the best.
It's my understanding that we have technology deployed that helps track the number of gotaways that have unlawfully crossed our borders and evaded capture by our border patrols. Is that correct?
We do have technology that is a force multiplier for our personnel.
Okay. Again, under oath today, I'm asking you, has this technology been operational since you took the post?
I would like to get back to you if there's any deficit in its operational capability. Senator, I'd be pleased to get back to you on that.
Has the system ever gone down under your tenure?
I'd be very pleased to provide you with that subsequent to this hearing.
How could you not know that? How could you not know what type of, is it been down once or twice? Has it been down for weeks at a time, months at a time? Any just range or thought that you could give us? Do you keep track of it in any way, shape, or form?
Senator, we deploy so many different technologies across the expanse of our department, which consists of 268,000 people. If a technology goes down for a short period of time, I may not have visibility of that. I'm the secretary of the department.
Do you think it's been down for a significant amount of time or an insignificant amount of time?
Senator, as I've previously said, I would be pleased to provide you with the information you request subsequent to this hearing. I will look into it.
How can you keep track of the gotaways if you have no program in place that tells us when this is working or not working?
I'm sorry. Senator, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. How can you tell how many gotaways you're reporting if you don't know when this technology is working or not working? In other words, how do we know that the 2 million known gotaways is a good number?
Senator, the individuals on the ground in U.S. Customs and Border Protection have visibility of the operational capability of the equipment they use. They oversee counting the number of individuals who evade detection to the best.
But you rely on technology to observe those as well, and you don't know if your technology is working or not working.
Senator, I believe I've answered the question.
No, you've not. You've said you don't know. The answer you've given is you do not know. You don't know much of any of the answers to the questions we're asking.
It's just absolutely unfathomable how the Democrats couldn't even. Here's the thing, Julie.
And he knows.
Of course he does. He's just
he says I don't know because he's under oath and he doesn't want to commit perjury, basically.
If Alejandro Mayorkas is great at being Homeland Security, and there's no reason why you should get rid of him, if he's doing a stellar job, if he is protecting this nation, if he is killing it on the border right now and doing the greatest, this is a great political opportunity for Tim Kaine and his fellow Democrats to slam dunk on the Republicans. They should be like, absolutely, let's bring it. Let's have this trial. We'll expose Republicans for how horrible and political they are, because we'll drag. Remember when they said, when they impeached Bill Clinton, that ended up being a huge benefit for Democrats politically, because they were able to dunk on Republicans. So why aren't they doing that if he's so good? Because he's not. They know he's a disaster, and they just want it to go away. Don't let Tim Kaine get away with this. Hung Kao, by the way, who wants to be the Republican nominee for Senate to run against Tim Kaine, he is going to join us later at 7:05 to talk about this. Meanwhile, Speaker Jordan appears is moving forward with this Ukraine funding and Israeli funding without forcing border protection. This was his pledge. This was his number one promise, that border protection will be first and foremost the tip of the spear. And now he says that because he got a security briefing inside a skiff, he believes that, well, it's more important to make sure that Ukraine gets funded. Not sure what happens to these guys. Real fast, here's a report on illegal immigrants found in what can only be described as a concentration camp-like setting across the border here in America.
Last Friday, 40-year-old Albert Torres was asked to get out of the car when they say drug paraphernalia fell. Torres and his passengers then told the officer about a migrant stash house that they were driving to. It had 16 migrants.